All right, let us begin, first of all, by checking out the current state of the OCG metagame. Now, I don't know how long this is going to take because I can already see at the bottom we still have Ryziel in a very commanding position, but let us see if new product Supreme Darkness shows up anywhere. No, just for... Hold up. Supreme Darkness Yu-Gi-Oh! Just for my own. I need a reminder real quick what's in here and what I'm looking out for. Like what I'm expecting to do well. Hold up. Let me take a quick look. Supreme Darkness has... What was great? It's the new Molt Charmy. There's new Azamina support in here. What was this? A new Mermail support wave? Overall, Supreme Darkness looks solid, but nothing too crazy, right? Like, we're not expecting anything completely insane to pop up here. Right? You've got, like, the skipper thingy is, like, Malice support. You have this is Ryziel support. Got some new Mermail cards, Molt Charmy, new Azamina, but nothing all too crazy, right? Not the craziest set, which I'm gonna be honest with you, I think that is not a bad thing. Like people seem to be unhappy when we get sets like this sometimes, but I generally feel like at the moment it's a good time to release sets like this with the premise that, like, you know, the power level in Yu-Gi-Oh! In 2023 was pretty high. So I think it's actually a good move to release lower power level cards into the format, and then they will become relevant as long as they just properly hit the powerful decks, right? Then, you know, you will go back and look at, okay, what was in this set that actually is good, right? Of course, it's always pros and cons, right? What is good for the game balance can sometimes be bad for example, vendors, right? Because if a set flops on release and doesn't, like, break the meta or something like that, right, then it's not gonna sell as much as if, like, of course, like, that's the thing, right? Broken sets with really powerful cards in them will sell better immediately, but they might be worse for the game in the long run because, you know, like, who wants to play a game where every single set completely breaks the meta apart, right? So, like, you gotta balance it out. And Supreme Darkness is one of the ones that I think is going to be on release just okay, you know, some solid cards in there, but maybe once they address some of the current meta decks on a ban list, then we might go back and look at these cards and be like, okay, what now? These might now be playable. Also, the GOAT Hallow is in here. Not Hallow and Ween are in here. Anyways, let's see if any of the stuff from Supreme Darkness finds its way into this metagame report. Obviously, I'm seeing most played deck Ryziel by a very good margin in front of Malice, which I personally am happy about. I'm happy that Ryziel seems to be better than Malice, at least in the OCG. Whether that's going to be the same for us in the TCG remains to be seen because we don't have Maxi and all that kind of stuff. And Malice obviously is like very, very combo heavy and kind of Cybers combo-y, and so I just like I'm in theory a bigger fan of Ryziel. In practice it remains to be seen, but yeah, we've got Voiceless Voice at a very, very impressive third place representation with almost the same numbers as Malice. That is interesting. That is very, very interesting and not something I expected, but I will say Voiceless Voice is just a solid concept. Like, that deck is a good concept. It just works. Solid one card combos with some potential to play through hand traps with extenders, and usually has a decent amount of room for non-engine and makes some pretty solid mid-rangey boards. I think it's quite solid overall. Then we've got Tenpai, we've got Memento, we've got Snake Eyes sitting at 4%. So it's just, besides Ryziel being the most played deck by far, everything else seems to be fairly split. You've got some Blue Eyes, some Labyrinth, some White Forest, some Centurion, some Branded, some Goblin Bikers, all kinds of stuff. Anything new going on in Ryziel here? Oh, that's refreshing. A Ryziel deck that doesn't play Artifact Scythe. That's cool, I guess. I feel like this is the least amount of hand traps that I've seen in an OCG deck in a while. Which is an interesting development to see. Because this is 11, right? And 11 hand traps is quite few. Considering how, like, the standard in, like, Snake Eye times was, like, 18 or something. So we are slowly seeing the development that we were talking about at the beginning of the OCG format after their last ban list. You guys remember how we were watching that one video of that OCG player who said they think hand traps and like these hand trap wars and stuff like that, they might become less popular because Ryziel actually makes fairer end boards, so you don't need to hand trap it. You can actually play like board breakers again, and even here you can play like a healthy mix between like hand traps and board breakers, because we're playing like a mix. We're playing Ash, we're playing Imperm, but we're playing Droplet and a small thrust package as well with 1 talents and stuff like that. Like, it seems like a fine way to go about it. Like, Ryziel in most of its aspects seems fine to me. Of course, the synergy with cards like Artifact Scythe can be cringe, but like overall, like this is like a quite the healthy development, I think. If you compare this to like Snake Eye formats or whatever, like this is not, I don't think this is nearly as crazy as looking at Yubel or Snake Eye lists. Also, like keeping in mind that out of those 11 hand traps, there is only 6 of them that actually stop your opponent like from actively doing something. Like Maxi and Fuvolas are like obviously really good cards, Maxi specifically, but your opponent will not lose resources to those cards. It's on their deck to decide how much they can do under it. That's more aimed at Fuvolas. Maxi is still stupid, of course, but yeah. So that's Ryziel. And then we've got Malice, which is obviously, I think Malice is the more crazy looking deck overall, because it's got some, like, I mean, the end boards are just scary, right? I feel like the Malice end boards are very, very scary, and it might end up being, because of the absence of Maxi, it might end up being more powerful in the TCG than Ryziel. That we'll have to see, but of course Fuvolas still hits hard against it. This player here doesn't even main deck the Fuvolases, and rather only side decks 2 copies of it. I guess it is mostly about beating Ryziel over there. So that kind of makes sense, right? From what I've heard, Ryziel is not that weak to Fuvolas. So them moving it to the side deck does make sense. We're playing an Allure package, just 2 copies. We're playing the new format skipper retrain from Supreme Darkness. We're playing Code of Soul. All right. Interesting. Does Ryziel play? Yeah, Ryziel plays the new Eclipse rank 4. All right. And then Voiceless. Tell me, why is Voiceless Voice suddenly... Oh, they're playing Ryziel cards in it. Hold up. Many Voiceless Voice builds are now running the Nadir package alongside the standard Diviner package. When going first, Nadir Servant can be used to send Garura and Maximus from deck to hand. Draw a card of Garura. Then you summon Maximus and send Arclight and Ferrigit to search and get a redraw. I'm trying to think, like, how dangerous would it be to activate Maximus against Ryziel? Because I mean, they play Aggregator, but at the time where you have Maximus on the board, there isn't really anything they can negate yet, right? So it's not like the biggest deal. Any of these other stuff is not like not really impactful on your turn, right? Like they can't send any disruption, or they don't gain anything from it, is what I'm trying to find out. Like mid game it can be awkward, I guess, because they will have Meteorologic Aggregator in their extra deck. So if you already have some other stuff on the board, if you like top deck into a what's it called? Into a Nadir Servant or Maximus, it could be awkward. Also, because they are playing Ultimate Slayer over there, maybe there are some decks that will get some advantage from it. Like, I don't know, this deck has D-Safe Worm in the extra deck, for example, where if that goes to the graveyard, that can be a negate later. You don't want to give him that for free. But I guess it's overall, it might be worth it, right? And then, okay. Running the Ryziel package in Voiceless Voice is not as common, but is trending enough to keep a lookout for. Similar to the Nadir package, the Ryziel package is useful going first or second. When going first, the Ryziel package can set up Detonator as an additional threat alongside Skull Guardian. When going second, the Ryziel package can be used as a board breaker by using X Ryziel to send Aggregator from Extract to the graveyard, whose effect would then negate a card on the field. Okay, so what I'm getting from this is we're just trying to bring more like... We're just trying to give the Voiceless Voice deck higher ceiling and more flexibility in what it can do, right? Because it feels like, and this, honestly, this is, once again, I want to point out that I think this is a very good development for Yu-Gi-Oh! It feels like these decks are trying to move away from playing too much non-engine, because what they're doing right now with these kind of lists is like they're saying, okay, I could be playing a Voiceless Voice deck with like 18 non-engine, because I mean, they could play non-engine instead of Nadir Servant and the Ryziels. They could play 7 more hand traps or something. But they're like, I don't need that right now, because the ceiling in this format seems to be a lot lower, and I can actually go ahead and play some more engine in my decks, right? Like I can play a 40 card deck like this one, and I don't have to cram 20 hand traps into it. I can actually choose to play more like engine, because you can actually play Yu-Gi-Oh! Engine versus engine again in these kind of formats with the kind of boards that Ryziel makes. That's the kind of vibe I'm getting from this. And obviously, I'm not playing the OCG right now. I can't confirm whether this is true, but these are all trends that, to me, after how 2023 Yu-Gi-Oh's been, it feels very good to see this, right? It feels very good that you can actually go ahead and be like, okay, this Voiceless Voice deck, you know, 10 or 11 hand traps, fine. I don't need to add 6 or 9 more of them. I can just play like Nadir Servant and some Ryziels just to give me some extra plays and some extra engine, and it'll be fine, right? And that's good, I think. I think that this is good. Obviously, it's not perfect, right? Like, I'm not saying, looking at the OCG right now, that they've got 0 problems. Of course, like turn skips are still a thing for them. Like Maxi, D-Barrier is a huge deal. A lot of cards in here, individual cards, Lancia versus Malice, D-Barrier in this one as well. D-Barrier is in almost any deck. Like right now, D-Barrier is one of the... I think D-Barrier is a card that, like for the TCG, I think it's on the chopping block very, very soon, because it's gonna be one of the most oppressive cards, like for so many formats in a row, that I think we will start talking about D-Barrier again very, very soon on whether that card should get banned or not. But no, I just want to point out, like, I think it's important to point out when you think things are moving in like a negative direction, which I also do sometimes, but I also think it's important to point out when things are looking to get better. And I think these trends are definitely a sign of improvement, right? It's not perfection, but it's improvement. The fact that you don't have to play 18 hand traps in these sort of decks is good to see, right? Because what this means is you can actually realistically win some games if you only draw 1 or maybe no hand traps by just having solid engine hands, and that's a good thing to see. Even with low ceiling decks like Voiceless Voice, which isn't like, it doesn't do the craziest stuff. Maybe the new Necros cards can actually thrive in this lower power format. See, for all these kind of things, these are just like outlooks and possibilities and signs of how it's gonna go. We have to wait and see how this turns out once we get those cards here. And it's a lot of like theory, right? Like in practice it might turn out differently, but for now I think early 2024 Yu-Gi-Oh is an improvement over majority of 2023 Yu-Gi-Oh, and that's a good thing because it's a step in the right direction. So I like most of what I'm seeing here. Conclusion: Supreme Darkness has very little impact on the OCG metagame. The top 2 decks, Ryziel and Malice, receive minor boosts. Abao Akyu, the Lightless Shadow, is another notable card from Supreme Darkness, but currently lacks a powerful deck to bring out its full potential. Right, that is this card, which we've talked about previously. This is one of those cards that is very, very good, but does still require like somewhat of a home, right? Like this card is nice, it's very, very cool, And I hope it's going to be playable at some point because it seems very fun to play with, but it does require some sort of setup. It's not as like generically, not quite as generically good as something like an SP Little Knight, right? But like this card is good and we'll probably see play eventually. Task formed an all-star team with Tanaka Masato and Kondo Yuto. Together, they surprised the competition with their unique Fiendsmith Goblin Biker deck that utilized Lightless Shadow. However, once the dust had settled, the Fiendsmith Goblin Biker decks have not been able to replicate their success in other tournaments. I remember this. Yeah, they played a 3v3 tournament. I think, can I click this for the deck list? Yeah. Yeah, they won a 3v3 tournament with Fiendsmith Goblin Bikers, which was pretty cool to see. Yeah, this one. But it looks like it did not quite. It did not quite make it into like super popular territory, even though I remember seeing some up here. Yeah, like Fiendsmith Goblin Biker. It's here. Some people play it, but it is not yet, you know, overtaking Ryzeal, which I think one of the major things to realize with Ryzeal in particular is that I really don't think that Ryzeal is this popular because it is that powerful. Like, it is a very good deck, otherwise it would not be able to put up these numbers. But I think the most important thing to realize about Ryzeal is that it seems to be relatively simple to get into, and it can't be stressed enough how that sometimes is a really, really important factor about like getting people to play the game. And Ryzeal is just like the perfect deck for that, it feels like. So as long as a deck like this is just very good and like, but also in a way healthy, I'm fine with it. But I think that is a big factor in why that deck is so popular in the OCG right now. And so that's a big thing to note. And yeah, like Sword Soul, it's a little bit like that. Like Sword Soul was also a really, really popular deck, right? It was never... well, actually, there was times where Sword Soul was the most popular deck as well, right? I'm pretty sure, like, at some point in 2022, it was like the whole... there was a lot of decks, but I would still say that Sword Soul was probably the most popular around Nationals 2022, right? It was like Sword Soul, and then Branded, and then a lot of other stuff. But Sword Soul definitely was the most popular, I think, without being the most powerful. Like, it was good, but there were other decks that could definitely compete, but Sword Soul just took had the edge of being like simple to get into, right? So I think that's important to note. Oh yeah, look, at the end of the day, there's two things that we need to wait for to see whether 2024 Yu-Gi-Oh for us in the TCG is going to be like nice. I think it could be very, very nice, but obviously two things need to happen. We need to wait for Ryzeal and Malice release, and we need to see how these decks fit into the TCG environment. And we also need to wait for the Yubel and Snake Eye hits that definitely still need to happen, right? Like I said, releasing new mid-range decks that are more fair and more down to the ground is a good thing, but you still need to get rid of those cards at some point. Like like that will not go away, right? The Snake Eye combo potential and the Yubel combo potential will not go away unless they address it, right? And that also still needs to happen at some point. We've already gone a big step in the right direction with the last Forbidden Unlimited list, right? Like Snake Eye is nowhere near as toxic as it used to be, even though it is still very popular. And Yubel is as toxic as ever, but it is less popular because of Fuvelas and Impulse, but still, you know, those are still things that need to be taken care of.